Alrighty, kia ora tātou. Nā mai, haere mai. Welcome everyone. What we'll do is just, obviously we've got a workshop which we're live streaming, so I'm going to whip around the room, get everyone to introduce themselves who is going to be speaking in front of a mic today. So we'll start with you, Councillor Booth.
Councillor Booth.
Kia ora, I'm Sally Parker.
Kia ora, Councillor Owen Jackson.
Kia ora, Councillor Peter Bird.
Stacey Scott.
Gavin Oliver.
Scotty Shannon.
Good morning, Councillor Michelle Pye.
Stu Piddington.
And I'll get Chief Executive and Beth to intro yourself as well.
Kia ora, I'm Nigel Trainer, Chief Executive.
Beth Stewart, Group Manager, Community Services.
Perfect. Me and Nigel Bowen, and we've also got
Stephen Doran, GM of Corporate and Communications.
Brilliant. So this is a workshop, obviously lots of public interest. Great to have everyone with us in the gallery today. We're not obviously making decisions today, but it's around having a conversation and shaping what the paper might look like for the 31st, which is, I think, Thursday, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just if you bring that into context when you're having discussion, keep that in context, sorry, when you're having discussion that we're not making any decisions, really important. I'll now ask Stephen to lead us into the workshop.
Cool. Thank you, Mayor. So, welcome everyone. It's everyone's favourite topic, the theatre. I can tell you're all energised to be talking about it again. So again, no decisions or recommendations. It's about just giving you a high-level state of play and where we're at with various options and prior to coming to the next council meeting. Hopefully this is about you guys talking to each other about the pros and cons of each option rather than going deep into the details. The detail will come with the council bits and bobs. I'll note stuff down on the whiteboard as we go. So the first thing we want to look at the holy trinity of buildings around us. There's the library, the museum and the theatre. First of all, the library. So the condition of the library is moderate to good. The roof is knackered. That's probably its main point. We bought some time about a few years ago repainting the roof with butanol stuff, but the substrate under it's beginning to go. The window updates mean some bits of it in pretty good condition, and common to many of our buildings, there's some parts of it that are bringing the earthquake rating of it down. So the draft DSA we're looking at, the overall feeling is that a reasonably small amount of work could bring up to 67.2. The biggest problem with that building, though, is the roof, which needs replacement sooner rather than later. Rough ballpark from that, and again, these are only estimates, is about 2.5 million to do in the future. Yep. Yeah, that's the roof and the earthquake strengthening.
Sorry, just questioning, like, you've got an NBS of 15% and with some works to 67, that would be a miracle to do it quickly and cheaply. Do we have a costing and do we have a detailed seismic assessment?
No.
So,
these are high-level estimates.
Councillor Piddington, we have a draft detailed assessment, and that we received that on Wednesday of this week, last week. The wall and the roof connect, and once you connect those, the rating comes up quite quickly. So it's only one facet that's pulling it down. Is that correct, Nicole? Do you want to come and sit up here?
Could, as councillors, we have copies of those reports?
You will get them.
Thank you. Welcome, Your Worship, councillors. We've had some targeted work within what I call the shell, where all the books are in the main part of the library, and it has indicated some of the connections of steel within the frame to be at 15%. It is those targeted areas, if repaired, which is of where the columns are and actually fixing through there, could bring those parts of the building up to 67%. We haven't done any further work, so there isn't a draft DSA in full. We've just targeted this one area at the moment and actually complete the rest of that work and get a full report for you. So the indications are a targeted area at this stage and then a full report. So we've done this initial work in the first instance.
So I think the key thing moving into that paper on the 31st is that we've got confidence in the number. Yeah.
Yep.
And also the outstanding work. So if you're only focusing on one future, I think you're obviously only looking at one bit, but what is it in its entirety for the future?
Yes,
I think
yes.
that's important.
And I won't have that information won't be available for next week, but it will be available. It's a little bit longer to do that work and there is a cost involved, so it's more engineering work, but I can certainly make an effort to get some that may uncover some of the areas. There's some really good plans and Warren and Mahoney did some very, very detailed drawings, so they've actually been able to use those to have a look at the structure and target certain areas. That's helpful.
We do though need a full budget of, so by the 31st we do need to know the high level number, so we're not then
to uncover with more certainty what those numbers are for the condition repairs in that targeted area, but I will get a view over the rest of it. So we're working on that now.
we have confidence in the $2.5 million number, or is going to be more?
I guess this is my problem though, to be fair, is we're told the roof, which isn't including the earthquake repairs, is $2 million roughly, but there might be another $2 million in getting the rest of it done. Because it sounds like we're guessing, and I don't want to be in a guessing situation.
Well, no, we've cost profile sitting in behind it, and then what we are being told, the earthquake repairs to bring it up to 67% are actually not that difficult. So the $2.5 million is a pretty good estimate.
Okay, so we can be confident $2.5 million, and then it's just a normal maintenance schedule like any other building.
Just to understand, so the 2.5 million is a roof replacement plus the seismic work. Okay.
I've got a report here, 2019, by Structex, and there's a fundamental issue with the building itself having a flat roof, and the connections to the concrete walls of being particle board, and basically when it rains, the whole thing just, there's a lot of weight on there, and it has continually leaked.
I think the condition report is pointing that out again. So that's part of the roof replacement. For whatever reason, particle board is up there.
So yes. Is it going to have a proper roof that sort of goes like that, or is it just going to be another flat roof that's going to leak water, which it's leaked its whole life, that building, so I believe?
There's lots of buildings with flat roofs, so it will continue to have.
So 2.5 million will rectify all those issues and fix all the cracked walls, etc., which is noted in this report.
That's our estimate at this stage. No chance.
One of the risks in relation to this, for the fact that who the architect was and why, and obviously the interested parties in this, and so we need that as factored in the risk profile for that. Because of that, it means that we might have an appetite to spend the money because alive to that. My understanding going back was that as part of that all in and all this, and they were all fixed at the time. It was resealed and what have you at the time, and with all those buildings, it actually doesn't take much to change a flat roof to the very slightest pitch where you don't have water lie and it runs away and you waterproof it. But obviously there's a design fault right from the beginning, and that's what we need to overcome.
So next one's the museum. As you see from the condition report that was sent around, the condition of this one is octagonal building. All those bits around here, which used to be windows, which was pretty useless for museum purposes, have all been painted over, but all the frames are beginning. This door is beginning to get waterlogged in the stuff that it's built of, which was great thing. And the hollow core floors, which are problematic in quite a few of our other buildings, are also problematic in this one. And again, the draft DSA has it at about. Our estimates to fix this one are about $3 million, but again, these are just high-level estimates based on the condition reports and the DSA we've got. Which again, it's a mixed bag from poor to good. Building as a whole is at 33% at IL3. Again, it's a case of a few bits of the building bringing it down. I think in this case, it's the concrete reinforcement along the fly tower that's the weakest bit of it. The interesting thing is the theatre is one that's either fixed by option 1 or it's just ignored by options 2 or 3, so it's one that fixes itself no matter what you choose. Short version is, it's fixable. We have some work being done that might indicate it's actually fixable easier than we initially thought it was fixable for, so that might move the price along a wee bit. So what next? Option 1. So the background to this is the NB architects were asked to go and take a look at all the work that had been done before and come up with a concept where you could just do the theatre and see what they came up with there. Without having to fit a museum in beside, it's allowed them to be a lot more flexible in how they've used the space, and they've come up with this idea, which is basically the existing theatre as is, and then building alongside to fix the internal flow problems with the toilets and the bars, etc. They built an extension on the side of it, which will have a bar and cafe area. They've also added a new scene dock and an extension to the south wing. And then everything else that was in the previous option 1, sort of the upgrades of the internal systems, the seating, floors, etc., are all included in there. So they've taken all the work that was done up until that point and put a bit of a placemaking view on it, as well as offering truck access. When there aren't trucks in here, this will be a new sort of plaza that will link Blarnard Street down to Stafford Street. In discussion with stakeholders, it's not perfect. We are still working with an old building, and with that comes some compromises. Our team think we can engineer our way through those. Basically, the main problem when we came down to it was that in the south wing, there wasn't as much space as lighting to do by about a metre. We think that we could do something clever and try and give them that metre of space back, which is to address most of the concerns. The new changing rooms, etc., at the back would address most of the other concerns as well. And then there's an ongoing conversation to be had about what happens under the stage and whether that can be used as future storage or an extension of the orchestra pit. But again, concept we've come up with so far, it's a bit more placemaking. This is how it would sit in the streetscape. So the truck would come in here, turn and reverse to the scene dock, which is just there. You'll notice there's this blue box at the back, which offers a possibility for spacing for a new museum, which would face onto Barnard Street. So it would create this through line all the way there. These are really arbitrary scores that we've come up with. So performance scale, space out of 2, just to say that there are some compromises with this one. We've given it 2 out of 3. Audience facilities, it will be new seats. They're going to re-rake the floor to improve most of the sight lines. So that'll be good. The new bar, new toilets, new etc. So it'll be pretty glitzy for the theatre goers, and it's the old theatre, so it will have that level of sort of chintz and glitz and glamour that the other ones don't. Museum, there's space available, but it will require further investment. We're not talking about this right this second. Scores high on protection and heritage. The 2 main buildings in question are the theatre and the library. Both of those are preserved in some manner. Revenue streams, it's got the biggest auditorium, so most bums on seats, most tickets sold. How you approached how the operation of the cafe bar goes, whether you lease that out to someone or whether it just is open times outside the theatre is up to you. They have designed it with a degree of flexibility in mind, so you can use the various spaces for things like small conferences and meetings and that sort of thing. It has the lowest capital cost out of the three options, and we feel that because of the work that's gone into getting up to this point, it has the shortest lead time. So,
sorry. Just on the cost, we've got it at 29.1. That was done by our QS, and there was some information still to come when we did that. The peer review completed by a builder for the architects is coming at 25. So it's going to be somewhere between 25 and 29. So there's quite a difference there. And I presume the market will tell us which one is right. The other thing to, what was I going to say? Doesn't matter. We'll come back to it.
Yep. So I'd like to hear what you guys think about it, and I'll jot it down.
I was just going to follow on, Mr. Traynor, around those reports. Will we receive those for next week as well, though?
Which report?
Like your QS reports, and
Yep.
instead of just getting a,
Yep.
you know, a line.
Yep.
Yep, thanks.
Excluded because it's commercially sensitive, and we want to make sure we get the best deal we can.
As far as those condition assessments, they can be made public, though, can't they?
Condition assessments already been come to you, they can be made public, yes.
Yeah. Question on this, and so this, am I right? If we choose this, we actually don't have to go through consultation.
The law states that you have to take consideration of affected parties and interested people and the general public. I'd say from my time here, this is probably one of the most consulted on projects you've ever had. Going back to 2017 in the LTP, when the initial decision to do a theatre was put forward. A lot of water under the bridge since then, but we would hazard a guess that through the various consultations and through the LTP process that you have a reasonably clear idea what the public thinks about doing up the theatre. The suggested consultation wouldn't really be a formal consultation either, but because you weren't wanting to put forward a proposal. So it would just be informal feedback. It would just be, here's what we reckon, what do you reckon? So, I mean, there's no impediment to going out to consultation, but it doesn't give you any extra standing when it came to making the decision. At the end of the day, you guys make the decision.
Yeah, like partly I'm thinking about time. We've kicked this around for 6 years. We do need the right outcome, but we've got quite a lot on our agenda for the next 12 months, some really important stuff. So it would be great to move and get a result on this.
Can we go back a slide? I don't know if this is the right time to bring this up, but I'm going to. There. So that mustardy colour, that's going to cost us between 25 and 29 to get up to speed. The possible museum sitting right in behind it is somewhere between 12 and 15. So you're going to be up around the, what's the maths? Sitting up around the 40-ish, 45. But that, if we committed to a two-stage effect, then that brings back the MB money of 6. Plus, it saves us having to spend money on the current museum, which is thick end of 2.5. Plus, you can then potentially sell the museum site, which bring in some more money. So when you start looking at all of that, plus you could sell the Criterion and the Chinese restaurant as well. So once you do all of that, the cost of this whole project would be 37, which that is starting to be quite quite effective in terms of its total cost. So there's a total cost there that is actually lower than any of the others.
Because what's sitting in the budget, 45 and a half, is that?
46.1?
Yeah.
46.2.
So we make a
Yeah. So you
$10 million saving on
$10 million
budget.
saving by if you commit to that entire scheme and phase it. Now, the beauty with this one also is the right hand. It opens itself up really nicely for commercial stuff, particularly hospitality, I would suggest. Plus, depending on what you do with that right-hand side, there's also a fantastic place for markets or outside performances or whatever. So it's actually got for the town or the city, it's got a lot of appeal in terms of becoming a destination of arts and all sorts.
Sorry. Yeah, just a couple of points, going back through the points just made. I think we do have to consult. We've told people publicly in this meeting last time we would consult on options, and I'll be uncomfortable making a decision without consulting in some way. I'm a bit confused with the theatre. I thought one of our options was just to make good, and we're adding things, to bring the price down. All of a sudden we've got a wing with bars and social spaces that aren't essential in a theatre but add to the cost. On that second page of scenarios, someone, I'm not sure, has valued selling the Criterion and the former Chinese Gardens at 1.5 million. You're dreaming. You won't even get $500,000 for it. So I'm starting to have problems and confidence already with those figures. I mean, we've got someone who's a developer in the back of the room. I don't think he will think 1.5, so we're $1 million out there to start with. So where do we get the figure of 1.5 for selling the Royal Garden that needs to be demolished and the Criterion Hotel?
There's an estimate. There's a property on Barnard Street, the corner of Barnard Street and Walcombe Street, that's on the market with $3.5 million. And also, I mean, if you only got $500,000 for it, well, it increases the total cost of that concept to 28. So that's, and also council's got to decide, would they sell it or would they keep it and do the commercial themselves? So there's lots of moving parts here. You're not going to get absolute precision in these numbers at this stage. It's more a concept. Do you like the concept? If you like the concept, we would move forward and do a lot more work on it.
One of the interesting things about the add-on to the side, there's not actually that much added on in reality, because this is already...
Look, Stephen...
But no, sorry, I'm not arguing with you, but I'll just explain it a bit more.
But I'd like to know the cost without all those additions.
But we're going back to the core principles of one of the things that we're trying to fix with the theatre, and it was one of the main problems, was people flow during the intervals, people get into the toilets and the bars. All this is doing, it's actually taking space away from the toilet area and just pushing out a little bit further and adding in a space where people can actually congregate at the time so they can get to the bar and get to the toilet at the same time and not have to fight with each other. So it's going back to those original things about what makes a functional theatre. From our designer point of view, apparently this isn't an add-on as such, but it's fixing what is one of the initial problems with the theatre, because it's not just the technical side of it, it's also the audience side.
Included to make it somewhat useful for other activities. So, and that was part of the very initial report, that the addition of that would actually improve the functionality of the theatre considerably.
Cool.
I think we need to, we can't be just pointing to the museum at the back and saying that's a possibility going forward. I think here, looking around the council, if we'd known the state of the museum as you put it to us today, I think there's a couple of councillors here that probably wouldn't have voted against the previous you know, plans of the totality of the total of all the parts, making it so much more functional, making it so much more flexible, having the conferencing and everything, and the sort of figures we're looking at today, we know there's going to be blowouts in those. You know, I'm not in this place about sound bites, but today the absurdity of this now is starting to show through. That's all I'm going to say.
Just coming back to Councillor Bird, well, you've come up with a better scheme if you choose to refurbish. This is a much better scheme, it's a much better space. You've got the outside flow, you've got the commercial connecting. I think it's much superior to the one that was rejected, is my personal view.
And we will get to something along those lines later.
Whether it's superior or not, I guess is probably subjective to the users. But one of the things that just concerns me is we've come down now to 29 million. What about the structural integrity of the building? Because we understood that the previous design was to a fairly high structural degree. So with these cost reductions for the theatre, does that mean that the structural integrity has come down as well? And if so, by how much?
So when you look at the size of house is at 95 to 100%, the auditorium is at 95 to 100%, the stage tower, that concrete piece at the top, that's at 33%. That brings the whole building down. So when that top is fixed, then the whole thing lifts considerably right up to about, I'm not going to guess, but it's earthquake strong. It's actually, strangely enough, of the three buildings you looked at today, that building is the strongest seismically than the others.
And one of the things that's brought the cost down is they've actually been more aware of working within the limitations of the site. So one of the options has a 2-floor changing rooms, but the upper floor is higher, so it pitches over on the site. So it's actually working with the contours of the building. And then it offers level access from that Barnard Street side of things as well. So, I mean, again, it's probably been it's been a different task because they haven't had the museum sitting beside it, so they've not had to make two buildings work together on two different levels, whereas they've pitched back this time and allowed them to kind of work up the hill rather than dig into it.
Stephen, how confident are we with the tuning of the trucks down that driveway off Stafford Street? Because it looks pretty tight, and with the extension building out and the width of Stafford Street, to be able to pull
so you can see the layout here. There's designs we've done before. So the truck will turn in, and then there's a turning bay here that it could go into, and then it would...
I'm more about turning in from Stafford Street.
It's going to be challenging no matter what, to be honest. But this is a straight turn in. It's very similar to other theatres around the country. So if you look at the Isaac Theatre Royal in Christchurch, it's down a little... It's like threading a needle trying to get a truck in there. So, I mean, it's quite a big space. I mean, it's the space between the edge of the theatre and the Criterion at the moment, so it's wide. The architects seem to be of the view that they could get a truck in there, and they're the experts in this, I'd say.
Meet the stakeholders' requirements around the width required for a functional theatre that they've been complaining about?
It got most of the way there. We got modern systems, we improved the sight lines. One of the interesting things that's happened is they've actually raised the floor level in the foyer up, so that enabled them to push the back end of the foyer, back end of the auditorium up a bit to improve the rake of the seats. So that improves the sight line apart from in 2 or 3 rows at the back where you won't see the top of some sets. It has the fly lines they required. The biggest issue was storage. There's the extra projection of the north wing here. The south wing is still quite cramped, but we feel that we could do things with the flag gallery as part of the detailed design that would sort of resolve that problem. I mean, there was lots of toing and froing, and there was some fraught and hard conversations that happened on the stage at Royal, but we think we got most of the way there, and we could get further with a bit smart thinking. It's not going to be the same as the new theatre, and when we've done our scoring, we have acknowledged that because you'll get something custom built. But a lot of it is down to, do you want the bigger auditorium? Do you want a circle? Do you want that theatre experience for the theatre goers versus do you want something that's more modern, absolutely fit for purpose, and but has less of that factor X to it?
Just back to that old chestnut, the MBIE money. So do we have anything sort of a bit more detailed on the outcome of whether we're going to get that money or not?
So the two things that prevented us getting it was the change of location and also the potential change of scope. So if we committed to this and a stage 2 of it, and it had to be the theatre and museum, if we committed to this and we had did it in 2 stages, then it's in the same location, it's the same building, the Theatre Royal, and a new museum, and basically it's the same project. So there's a very strong argument that the money would be available.
Very strong argument, but have you actually heard from them? Have they given you some sort of guidance on that?
They've put everything on hold while we decide what we're doing. The indications that I got was that this would be favourable.
They can't give certainty that it is just what it is, unfortunately. They will not get certainty as much as we ask, but if we can keep in line with what was originally proposed. What I'd like to suggest, because I agree with Stu, the Sailor criterion, 1.5 million's dreaming, but through this analysis and next week, everyone's going to go through these line by line and be slightly different in their view and where they sit. I've always thought that because we want to get these projects done, so we can actually, talk about some other stuff, which I'd love to be able to do before Christmas. But I'm of the view that we need to approach this with contingency outside of the project. And so you'll have contingency for library, and that'll be sitting in. We need to agree that that's it, whether it's a 15% or whatever we agree to. But actually, within the overall budget that we have sitting in there is 45.5 million. So we can agree to a contingency outside of all of those projects. So actually, we're still within that higher window. So we might be aiming for 40, but through a process, we can actually deliver these projects. So just another way to approach it, that we don't have to be 100% certain that 2.5 million is going to do it for the library fix, or 3 million is going to be the museum, or what have you. There is always going to be some ups and downs. That's the reality of making these decisions. There's nothing certain around those projects. What we don't want to be doing is going over that 45.5 and going back to community and say, hey, we didn't do it within budget. So that's another approach that we could take, and I suggest we consider that.
Don't we already have $1 million in the long-term plan for the library anyway, and that's not really in here? I thought we did for the re-roofing.
Sorry, just so we're accurate with the figures, and you might say it's only $1 million, but by the time you get 2 or 3 of them, it has quite an impact. The sale of the museum, so we're clear we could sell that land, because last time we talked, we thought we had to give it back. And again, you're not going to get $1 million for that museum or that site. Okay, cool. Second question regarding that was, when the museum, the one at the back, if they went on the same size as the one next door, we were retaining Perth Street Museum because there was still some functions going on there. So where are those functions going if we're selling it?
Right at the end of the four options, there's a semantic of this, and obviously if you put the museum at the back, you put the storage with it.
Okay, so I just wanted to be clear, and that's costed in there?
I have to check that, but it's something you would do.
Yeah, look, yeah. I agree totally, but I want to make sure it's costed.
I've been told 2 figures. The possible museum is at 12, and I was always working on 15. My 15 includes it.
Yeah. Okay, but I just don't want all these figures to come back and suddenly we're
Yeah.
4 million out.
Yeah, I mean, these are good questions. I think this is ready for next week.
Just picking up on Stu's point, with sale of the current museum site, that would have to go back to the museum, I believe, isn't it? So,
Correct.
Yeah, so that's...
So
yeah,
that's why it's in here as part of the museum.
Scotty, did you have a question?
Yeah, not so much a question, just that you asked what we think. I'm supportive of this as an option moving forward. And to me, this, and it is subjective, but this to me is a superior presentation to what we made a decision on back in July. I love the arts precinct idea, and I do like that we're considering stage development now too, because part of what changed some minds when we did make our decision in July is we were very conscious of what people thought about the scale of the expense at that point in time, and if we can stage and we can do things smarter, and and you can see that some of the budget in here, including potential sales of some assets, they are sweeteners, and I don't think we should hang our hat on how much we think we are going to get for things. And moving forward, as Nigel alluded to, I'm looking forward to making a bloody decision. So I'm very keen to see what this looks like next week.
Workshop to discuss what we're going to consider. So that's what the point of this is. So let's carry on. We've got a few other options here.
Just on the costings for the museum that are in front of us, does that include all of the streetscaping, landscaping, whatever you call the green space in there?
Yep, so the laneway development is in there. I mean, again, it's an impression at the moment, so probably there's some trees that aren't costed in there and various things. And I mean, some of that the precinct would develop as it developed. You would hope that having an appealing frontage on there would suddenly make it more commercially relevant than it was previously, because you'd get people going through there, and hopefully the market would then, but again.
Just follow up from that, there has been talk in the past about power supply to that and the cost to upgrade that.
Yep.
So is that included in all of the concepts too?
My question is for you, Beth. Just around stakeholder feedback, I know that you and your team have been working alongside stakeholders, and so on the 31st of October, will you be presenting stakeholder feedback? Because one of the things that unsettled me was the continuation of newspaper articles saying we haven't been listened to, we haven't been part of the decision-making process, and I would hate for us to get to that stage again. So are you planning to say, this is our stakeholder feedback, this is what we were looking for, these are some of the things we will not be able to do, just so we have some real clarity around that and everyone is aware of that on day one?
Thank you. We didn't do any sort of quantitative research as part of that stakeholder engagement, so we can't say that percentages or specific numbers of people have agreed with what we've said. But what we can say is that with the designs that we've worked with the architects on here, that was workshopped with the stakeholders. Their feedback was taken on board. They were taken through the actual facility as well, and we've run a number of workshops, targeted workshops with a broader stakeholder group, and we've commissioned a smaller reference group that, depending on the options that we do proceed with, we will engage frequently throughout the process with. I think there's a degree of confidence that we have certainly since in the most recent months engaged a lot more thoroughly with our core user groups. I'm not quite sure how we would present that necessarily in the report for next week, but we can canvass that option. But I would say that we're comfortable with the stakeholder support largely for this option, noting some of the limitations that Stephen spoke to before.
So if I speak to that as well, there was probably four main concerns. One was the storage underneath the stage. Now, effectively, you can have storage somewhere else if that doesn't come to pass, because it is quite difficult under the stage. The southern side of the stage being too narrow, we've worked with stakeholders, we've measured it out with them, and we've looked at alternate ways of getting the fly system up, so to create that space. And toilets was another one, the lack of toilets. there was some conversation about side of line, but a number of theatres have that, and you just price the seats differently. So I think, all in all, we've had good conversations with the users, and I think we've got a pretty good compromise, and really listened to them.
And that, I mean, there is some compromise built in because we are working with the old building at the end of the day. It was custom built as a theatre, but things change, sets are bigger, etc.
Just for absolute clarity for those people who might be watching online, and those who might have missed it. So with what me and Nigel were saying before, so I've got this totally right in my head. Theatre up to 29 million, museum up to 15 million, fix the library for 2.5 million, is that correct? And we bring it in at 45 million, is that how that works? Have I got that right?
Cool. The numbers I came to is roughly 52 million.
All right, passed around option one enough? Any more?
Yeah. So if you spend 29 on the theatre, and that's probably conservative, it's on the higher side, 15, and then 3 on the library, you're at 47. Less MB money, which I would argue we will get, so that's 6, so you're down to 41. Plus, if you sold some land, you might get it down to about under 40.
Can I just make a suggestion in the report that where something applies to all 4 options, we give a subtotal first, and then those figures that we're not sure about, a little bit what me and Nigel was alluding to, then go Sala Museum, that's the same across all 4, and then you get a new total. So then thank you.
Cool. Any last takers on option 1? Nope. Okay, option 2, which is Ashburton by the Sea. Basically, this is the one probably that's the least developed out of all the options, and we have an estimated cost based on square footage of the building. It would require further work to get the spec of the theatre. We have based it basically as Ashburton by the Sea. Slightly longer construction time, as it would need design from scratch. We got the architects to think about how it would work. Basically, they have it running alongside Barnard Street, fairly easy truck access, and that's it really. It's a 500-seat auditorium, doesn't have a royal circle, it would be up to modern standards. It doesn't have lots of extra stuff in it. It is basically just a redo of the Ashburton Theatre. Any future development for any museum or etc. would have to go somewhere around here. The existing Theatre Royal would be mothballed for future use, demolition, destruction, repurposing as a new museum, whatever you wanted to do with it at some point in the future. But this project would just deliver a modern theatre on that site.
And how many seats is that?
Sorry?
How many seats is that?
500.
500, thank you.
Yep. Single rake auditorium, good sight lines, modern theatre, just up to Ashburton standards, basically.
Does that include cost of what we do with the existing theatre? No.
The existing theatre would just be mothballed. We'd probably take down the sign.
Why wouldn't we take care of the existing theatre and bowl it and actually build a new one in its place?
This was an easier site to build on. The only challenging bit is that there'd be a retaining wall having to go there. The Ashburton Theatre footprint on that site probably wouldn't work as it's a bit longer, because it only has a single rake auditorium.
All the land on either side of it, haven't we?
Yep.
You tidy up that whole mess that we've actually got on that street frontage. If you look across,
yep.
It's an absolute, not terribly good. And while we fix one thing, there's a whole lot of other things that actually need to be addressed at the same time. And so why wouldn't we just take care of the festa, get rid of it, flatten a whole lot of stuff and make the room for a new theatre on the appropriate site?
And that could be the option. It would just add cost and time at the end of the day. At the moment, that's the closest thing to Greenfield site we have, so decided to stick a theatre there. But again, this is just a picture of a footprint of a theatre on a site. There's no specific plan for any specific position. That's just what they came up with for this thing. Performance space and audience facilities would be great because they're custom built. The museum, if you wanted to build a museum, it would probably either rely on the demolition of something or you demolish that for the theatre and put the museum up the back as planned. Protection of heritage, it scores less, but it still preserves the museum, so it's got one thing. If you were doing just a basic bare bones theatre that was only open for shows and the odd conference, probably revenue is a bit less. The capital cost sits in the middle of the two projects. And the timeline, because we're starting effectively from a blank page that we don't know where it's going to go or what it's going to look like, it would be a bit longer.
Just on the piece of paper I handed out to you on the second page, can you drop that? In the middle of the handout I gave you, it says new museum, it should be new library. One of the bigger issues with this one in terms of time, new theatre, sorry, one of the bigger issues is actually the demolition of the old theatre. It will take time. Heritage New Zealand will challenge us, so that will soak up time. How far they go, I don't know. You know, whether they go, the full hog, or whether they would at some point allow it, I don't know.
The option 1A theatre and museum, will they be standalone or was that a joined building? And could we do those in a staged approach as well? Or is that what you're looking at, or are you looking at those two?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing in
Standalone.
option 2 is
Okay,
a discrete theatre, so anything with the museum would almost be a separate project to some degree. But, I mean, if you fit it within the precinct, it would probably be similar to option 1 in that regard, but they are two standalone buildings.
If we don't do the theatre, the existing theatre anyway, aren't we by virtue of that making the decision that we just have to maintain it and let it go? So there's no difference between not having it and utilising the character and everything that the Historical Society is going to be jumping all up and down about. So we're going to, whether we demolish it or just forget about it, we're going to be up for significant challenges anyway. And we need to know and understand that as part of our risk profile.
And then you're going to have a group that's going to be Save the Theatres as opposed to Save the Theatre.
Does is kicks the can down the road. We're not taking care of anything, literally.
So just for clarity, the difference between option 1 and 2, the refurbishment of the theatre is basically 29.2 million, and if we went new it would be 32. So it's whether the public want to retain the old theatre or build brand new, and there's a $3 million difference. If we cut all that other stuff out, theatre to theatre comparison. Yeah, but you... Not if you could put the site up for sale, you might get $1 for it. So I don't want to build on all these possibilities.
Yeah, but you've got to think about it. You've got to think what are you going to do with it. You do have to think about what would you do with it. You can't just leave it sitting.
No, you'd put it up for sale.
Well, even if we put it up for sale, there'll be a loss on sale that hits the books as well.
Same with the museum. So, I mean,
I'm
just trying to make it clear for the public without getting caught too much into it. Because it's good you argue that, but you add $1 million on to a value of a building in the other way. So, I mean, all I'm trying to do, Nigel, is make it clear to the public. If they wanted it brand new on Barnard Street, 32 million. If they want to retain the Theatre Royal, 29 million. And let people think about that. That's all I'm saying. They may come in hordes and say, keep the Theatre Royal. No problem. But let's give them a clear option without getting too muddied.
We have to make the distinction between a theatre and an auditorium. They're two different concepts. And one has the ability to have all the fly and contraptions and everything else and that goes with it, and the historical significance of it and all that sort of stuff. And one's just an auditorium.
So this is spec'd up to being a functioning theatre.
People at Ashburton think they've got a functioning theatre, Pete.
Can't take care of this old theatre, who can? You just can't expect someone else to. And then that street will just remain, there'll be tumbleweeds going down there shortly. So, you know, unless someone steps up to the plate and actually takes care of the main festa in the whole lot, if we can't do it, no one else is going to be able to do it. So there's an opportunity, and it will reset. We have to think a bit further ahead.
Cool. Any more takers on option 2?
I just do want to get a bit of clarification. So if we were to consult on the second option, am I hearing the council saying just consult on the 32 for the build, or are we consulting on 32 plus what we do with the old theatre?
I would say we have to make sure that we include what do we do with the old theatre. Yeah. I think that's vital. Yeah, and what's the liability
a
of it?
replacement for the old theatre, a new one on that location, utilising the land we've got either side of it to make it fit.
But you got enough nods, yeah.
Cool. Okay, option 3, all singing, all dancing. So this is the big one. It's the Civic Centre on the library site. You've seen and discussed this one quite a bit. Again, because it's custom built, it would tick most of the boxes for the theatre alone. It also has a museum covered. It has a new library. It has various civic spaces and rooms and stuff like that, but it does come with the highest price tag. We would again require further work with stakeholders just to ensure that the theatre was meeting spec, because at the moment we have a really detailed concept. It's based on some of the work that's gone into the previous development as well, but we would have to do some more work on that to ensure that it was meeting those standards. So, risk side, we do have a degree of uncertainty. It's probably similar to the previous one, and the risk does increase a bit because of the cost, which is sitting at about 61 million. We've worked with Thompson's and our QS to look at what the price would sit with this, and they're reasonably confident on that, would you say? There are contingencies built in on both sides. So Thompson's have some contingencies, we have some contingencies as well, so that's the price we got to. This is where it would sit on Bank, Church, Sophia. It would be a game changer for Timaru. It would be something big and modern and new right in the heart of the city. It would offer lots of fresh new facilities. It would solve the problem of the library and the museum and the theatre in one fell swoop. But again, that comes with a big price tag. And again, it's not hugely respecting of the heritage values of those two buildings. We're not talking about the museum as a heritage building. Again, assumption is made that it is great for performers and audiences because it will be brand new. And that's really, I mean, you've kicked this one to death, so you sort of know this one already. And our score, again, high on audience performance, good on the museum because it's got a museum in it, has no protection of heritage whatsoever. Depending on what you did with the public spaces like the cafe and that sort of thing, it could have some revenue streams. Has the highest capital cost by quite a margin, but then that is spread over 4 things rather than 3. And we would say that the timeline is the longest because it still needs a bit of development. They still need to look into what the ground site is at the library, what needs done there, moving of transformers, etc., etc. So being conservative, we've said that would have the longest lead time. Comments on this one?
I think in the costings that you've given us, to Councillor Booth's point before, doesn't solve the problem of the theatre, so you need to add in the cost of demolishing the existing theatre into this rather than thinking we'll sell it and somebody else is going to do something with it. I kind of probably think across all options, we should be dealing to the theatre if we're not refurbishing it and adding that in as a cost. So that apples with apples.
We were being careful to try not to game things too much in favour of retention, but...
I agree, but the reality is, with all the other options, something needs to happen to that theatre, and as Councillor Booth pointed out, if we can't sort it out, nobody else is going to.
Yeah, I agree with Michelle. Look, it needs all the costs, whatever the options are, but can we go back a step with the nodding? Were we agreeing any new theatre, just so I'm clear, would go on the site of the old one rather than Barnard Street?
No, it's Barnard Street.
It is Barnard Street. Okay, I just want clarity around that. So I just want to know where we're putting it. I guess option 3, the other thing that was really attractive was it had operating savings of around $1.5 million a year. So, over 10 years, that's $15 million, 20 years, that's $30 million. So while it is expensive, and I'm not promoting it, but all I'm saying is there were significant savings in putting all 3 together, which was kind of attractive.
Could we have a subclause when you're going out for option 2 that Barnard Street or take care of the Theatre Royal and on the Main Street location, utilising the existing properties we've got? So that would be just a variation. Considering option 3, you've got 32 million for the theatre upgrade. And by the time we get round to doing the museum at the back, that'll be 20 million. There'll be another 5 years. And then 20 million for a library. So you're up to 70 odd million. And the thing that you gain from having all 3 in one spot is you're going to create a civic facility, a civic centre in the middle of town to rejuvenate the city. And that will be a major cornerstone of anything activity to occur in the future for the town. The consolidation of those civic facilities in one place is quite a unique opportunity. So, yeah.
The counter to that, which is equally so, is that you spread your civic facilities around and it helps a large part of town. But
Councillor Booth, didn't you just say to Councillor Shannon before, we're not here to promote ideas?
Sorry, Steph did just update on the library roof. There is a mill.
Oh, 20.
Yeah, so there is some in the budget.
Sorry, I think that's a point that we need to be 100% clear about what is in the long-term plan in the budget for the various buildings, when we're making the decision next week. Because if there's $1 million for the library, and is there anything for the museum and what was for the Theatre Royal Heritage Hub project?
Can't just take for granted that we get rid of the library. It's only going to cost us $20 million to fix something that doesn't need to be fixed if we're going to upgrade it and do what we need to do it, and considering its heritage value. So, you can't just throw that in on the top and say it's 70 million, it's good value, because we've just got rid of something that we're just going to add 20 million to.
Can we just walk through, sorry, you go first potentially, Nigel, because I want to walk through what it means as far as amendments across the options to LTP. Current one, number 1 would be not a lot of change, I expect.
Yep, number 1, you are building, if you stage the museum in, you're building a theatre and museum within the fiscal envelope that was given to the project.
Can I add to that?
Yeah,
I think your number 1 option will come in lower than what we've got in the LTP, somewhere between 6 and 10 million, which frees up that money to fix the library. So you've got money within that whole envelope for the Heritage Centre to potentially fix all of them.
From a governance point of view, and I know we need checks and balances over this, but I'm quite keen to get to a point whereby we have our projects, and I know we're going to talk later around the stadium, so I won't bring that in, but actually we agree to a direction, we actually just delegate Chief Executive to get on. Yes, we're going to have checks and balances, but we as a governance team, we don't need to decide what colour the toilet seats are. You know, someone else can do that, and if we get criticised for the wrong colour, also be it. You know, there's a lot of other things from a governance point of view over the next 10, 12 months leading into the next triennium that we have to concentrate on. So I'd just like for us to agree that once, you know, we keep it at a strategic governance level, make the decisions, get out of the toolbox a little bit, and then just get on and concentrate on some of these other things.
I'm cool with that as long as we have the skills, the people with the right skills to do the job. Yep. We don't take people out of places because they don't have much to do or whatever it is.
Yeah. And yeah, great point, Stu, in balancing the workload of our staff, and I think that's a key thing as well. Yeah.
And how do we manage project scope creep? Because I felt like that's what went wrong last time, and it made me very nervous, although I agree we need to engage the user group, but it made me very nervous when you said, I can't remember whether it was Beth or Nicole, that, you know, whatever option we go with, and then we'll engage the user group in the design process, and I'm just going, oh, here we go all over again, and to make sure we don't end up with something that we can't afford again.
That's the project manager's job, and how I believe that we need to structure this is we have a steering group. That steering group is holding people to account, particularly on scope, and the project manager is also holding people to account. I think there is merit with user groups. They can go one of two ways. They can either blow it out or they can help you pull it back. And I think we've got a user group that's wanting to help us pull it back.
If I may add on that point as well around the operations, I feel that enough work has been done already to date so that we've got enough information knowing what needs to go into a functional theatre. And to Nigel's point as well, I think using the stakeholder group effectively in that case will help us scale back on anything that it may be considered to be overspec'd in that case. So we're not starting from scratch.
Can I ask, in terms of construction and building on each of these different options, how does local construction and building fit into each of these scenarios?
Well, I don't see any reason why any of the options aren't built locally, with the exception of, say, the theatre system itself, which is specialist. And obviously, each of the options lend themselves potentially to different firms, depending on what they are. And they also lend themselves to different ways about going it. I would suggest your refurbishment of your theatre is actually designed the input to the market, whereas if you committed to museum, that could easily be design build because it's more easier. It's more of a tilt slab structure. So you've got to use the right processes for the right options.
On that point, I don't think we've signed off our procurement policy yet, have we? And I'm still nervous that do we have the right procurement policy in place to deliver on what you just said around locals doing this?
Yes, we do.
Manual we don't have, the policy procurement manual. We don't have that, so that needs to be dealt with.
Cool.
Sorry, and one thing before you do nothing, that'll go down well, is the third option is between 15 and 20 million above our consulted debt limit. So have we got bought finance in that regard? Because you're not just in consultation on option 3, you're actually consulting on the overall debt limit. So it's a wider conversation than just a civic centre on the library side, which we got quite strong feedback some months ago.
It would be put into the considerations at the expense of this one, but it's providing that picture of the Holy Trinity as a whole, really. It's what you do with all of them. That is the one-stop solution to everything, but it's with a big price tag, whereas the other ones are a bit more itsy-bitsy. Option 4, do nothing. Lock the doors, walk away, forget all this ever happened. Probably take down the decal that says the show will go on. Kept it real. We have not put any further ideas into this one. You literally lock the doors, you pay 500,000 to mothball it, and then it's about 200k a year just to stop it from falling down. It has a low project risk because you're not doing anything. It has a high reputational risk because you will have an old and deteriorating building on your main street. Doesn't score well using our arbitrary scoring system because it doesn't provide a performance space, no audience facilities, no museum. It does protect the library, so it gets 1 tick there. No revenue streams, very low capital cost, and the timeline is fantastic because you could decide just to do it. So, I mean, that's option 4 in a bag, really. It's not, we didn't put a great deal of thought into this one, to be honest, because it is just doing nothing.
But it still has some cost.
It has some cost.
Yeah.
It's not, nothing's not free.
Yeah.
Could be that you just flatten the whole area and then just see what happens.
It could be. Yeah. Again, it's creating, as you can tell by my amazing scribble there, it's creating a blank canvas for which you can put any ideas you like on it. But all of those come with some cost or some risk or something. It is what it is. It's down to whether that's an option that at this stage of the game you would want to give to the public.
Councillor
Little
Booth's...
bit
Oh, sorry.
ironic that we're putting in your figures, just to play devil's advocate, putting money in there for upkeep because we're in this position because no one was putting money in for upkeep. So I sort of think it's a little bit hilarious that that's one of the, you know, if we wouldn't be here, if we'd actually invested in these buildings, which is becoming quite apparent over the last 6 months that we are not doing that.
Yep. And this is just baseline maintenance too. And I mean, the other thing it would do is it would keep it in a state that would allow a future council at some point to make some kind of future decision on it, whether they or you're around the table or 4 or 5 councils from now wanted to pick the project up again and see what they could do with it. It would just keep it wind and wet all the time.
Doesn't help the depreciation funds, that last one though, does it, for future? Yeah, get the power cut off, yeah, it's key.
Are we deciding today to... No, we're not on that one.
No.
Okay.
No decisions.
Nope.
Probably one of the questions is, what do you want to see in the paper? Obviously, you've highlighted condition reports, all those things. Nigel touched on some PX stuff around QS, etc., that won't be in there or be in PX version. But is there anything from today's conversation that we're missing that you would like to see?
My one is financial impact as well, so which I know Michelle was covered off that, but to ratepayers. So remember, we didn't get that to the very last moment in our last decision-making round, so I'd hate to get ourselves back in that position. So I've been requesting that, so I would expect it to be in there, please.
Just regarding the financial impact, I know Councillor Pye mentioned about long-term plan. What about the other buildings that are actually not on the long-term plan for fixing in the future, what we are going to have to take note of in the next 4 or 5 years, and what those financial impacts are going to be?
Yeah, it is a different discussion, and that's what we said around this 3-year period after the long-term plan. We do all that work to feed into the next long-term plan to understand. And I know it's not a perfect world as far as having all that knowledge. It would be great to have it all, but we just need to tick through those, and probably in the new year it'd be nice for us to be able to prioritise which ones we're focusing on, and is there a need for annual plan amendment as such? Because I know there will be requests from the likes of the Geraldine around the theatre, the thing out there, yeah. And others, yeah.
So here's a roundup of the options where we really arbitrarily scored things, so it made it really obvious. But again, the custom-built ones have the best performance spaces audience facilities, probably in the new ones, are great. The museum's sorted by the new one. Lowest cost, again, revenue streams, possibly. We don't know. Protection of heritage and timeline probably is option one.
I guess capital costs only 3 million difference roughly, so the dollar sign should be the same.
Yep, probably. Or the dollar sign for option three should be.
Yeah, or whatever, but I mean, you're being a bit unfair in...
Again, this is shorthand. This isn't what's going to be presented to the public of the actual dollar signs, which is just our arbitrary scoring matrix.
Yeah, the other thing is I would like Michelle's suggestion of the costs and the other things, you know, resale below the bottom line, plus or minus. And that's where I think MB fits, because we don't seem to know, but we're happy to halve it for one option and give us the full amount. I think that should be below the bottom line as well.
MB and say, if we do option one, is it still, are you comfortable that fits your contract? And if they say yes, that goes in. Okay. If they say we don't know, then it's below the line.
We have factored in as well option 1 and 1A, which would essentially, or 1B, which would essentially be if we retained MB funding and if we didn't. So we have covered those bases.
Can I just suggest on this framework here, which I really like, we don't have operating costs, which has been talked about in this room, and that's quite different to revenue streams.
Yep.
In a perfect world, you'd probably put net or two different lines, or just net income or net cost to council, because I think that would be really helpful.
We do have the operating costs nearly done. There was a slide, but we'll put that into the 31st number because it's quite tricky. The option 3 involves 3 services, and trying to get that comparable to the other 2 options is quite tricky. So we're trying to work out how to do that to give you a very clear steer.
And all I agree, and the operating cost on this is a key one, the fact that Stu picked up, but comparisons to other facilities in other districts are being run a lot more efficiently than ours. And so if you threw that lens across it, actually you can manipulate that quite easily. You could just say, well, we're going to run this on 5 staff versus 10, and there's your fix. So you've just got to be, yeah. Yeah,
I just think revenue streams on its own is a little bit misleading. Yeah, that's my only thing.
I think the key operating number is the impact on the rates. So what we need to do is make sure we're very clear on how much of the rates is going to the 3 services now, and what will then be the rates given those options. Whether you're employing how many staff you're employing, that's the best. That's these people have been around all the theatres, they know what that is. We just need to think about how we present that the best way.
And I know you're not all going to like this, but the paper should step through. So effectively the consideration for next week will be you've got the option of going ahead and not consulting, or go into consultation. So that's just putting it up there now. That's what you've got in front of you. Yeah. And then that'll step through. So there'll be a first decision around option 1, probably, whatever that is, or consulting, and then consulting, finalised consultation to be sent, and timelines, etc. Yeah.
Museum. In this process, whether you look,
Got to the punchline early.
It's sort of, if you were going with an option that secured the MB money, it would drag the museum into it, I believe. So we have to think that through.
Well, I think. Sorry, you can stage. I'll let you jump in a sec, Stu. You can stage the paper again, because if you're there again, it's within. So if you're going to do the theatre, do you do the museum? So I think the options can be staged. So for the decision-making process, councillors can work through, well, hey, if they've decided theatre, then they can then consider museum, and that's a part B to that decision, versus if they decide consultation, then it probably is museum for another day.
But the current contract has got both of them in it with the MB.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
That's part of the decision. Yes, Stu.
Look, I agree totally. I'm not going to commit to a museum in 5 years' time. One of my jobs is to try and get the rates under 10% next year and delivering. And you look at the things we haven't been doing well, which is looking after our buildings that have suddenly come up with $6 million. And that's not in the long-term plan. So, I mean, for $2.4 million of MB money, you know, we're adding. Let another council at another day decide if there's going to be a museum, you know, because you can't commit in that way, I wouldn't have thought, but that's up to everyone around this table.
The counter to that is if we can deliver the theatre and the museum for less than what's in the long-term plan, why would we stage it? Like, why can't one of the options be do both now? Obviously not going to build them at exactly the same time, but commit to the whole thing.
And I think that's just part of the decision. So I just think we write the paper so it's stepped through in those ways, and you have a hurdle at every, you either yay or nay, and you go a different path.
So they did a bit of thinking about how the museum would fit on the site, because we thought a blue box wasn't particularly inspirational, and actually how that laneway plaza type thing would work. So this is from the street side. You can
Obviously, the front of that theatre will have a different colour.
Yes. And this is it from the Barnard Street side of things. So you can see the museum here. It's a relatively simple build. It would just be a big concrete box. It would look nice. But it would link, as a plaza, that north, east-west side from Stafford to Barnard. That was actually one of the things that was identified within the City Town project as a connector as well. So it sits with that. And then down the side of it, there is some area for future storage sort of snuck in the back that could be added on if required at the future, which would solve the Perth Street issue about the retention of it or not. Again, these are just artist impressions. They're not any developed design at all, but it just shows how the two things would fit together in a complementary manner, but they're not needing to be smooshed together as a single building as they were previously.
One quick question. Do we own those buildings, those three little buildings beside the museum? Do we own those or not? No. Nope. No, we don't. Okay, cool. Because they're pretty...
And just go back to that one, sorry.
Yep.
When you're talking about, just so we're clear, that maybe the next one. Oh no, back again. Keep going. Yeah, there. Mm-hmm. Possible secure storage. That's talking about Beth storage for gallery, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Yep.
I think we can do better than that, though.
What I'm saying is I just didn't want to, because remember that's another area that wasn't costed out. So that is that, isn't it, Beth?
Yes,
Okay.
and it is not specific to museum to theatre storage.
Oh,
It is to meet the needs of our library and
Galleries, yeah.
art gallery and museum.
Just thought, yeah.
What it was a little spare bit of space there, so they thought...
I think that we were getting a little bit confused around theatre storage. That is our next project.
Yes, correct. It's specific to our other operational needs. Yeah.
So, the theatre, the extended wing is here and the scene dock is here, so it does push the footprint of the stagehouse out quite a bit. The extension isn't full height, it's 7 metres because you're not actually having to fly things out of there. But yeah, do we need to consult? We've gone through that before. It's down to whether you feel comfortable that you know what the community thinks about it and you can give consideration to their views and purposes. For option 1, we say effectively you're building a theatre and or a museum within the budget, so you could go ahead with it. Options 2 and 3 are quite different, so you probably would have to consult. It would be better to run a proper consultation process where you had a preferred option, but if you don't want to do that, it will just be an informal feedback session. It doesn't have much standing. And that's it. What next is we'll probably bring a paper to you. We can progress. We'll offer you the option to progress option 1 without further consultation, or we will bring consultation materials to you that we can finalise and put out to the community. It would probably be November, December now and it might be bringing feedback to you at the February council meeting. Or if we're really hurried, possibly the December one, but it would be tight.
Can you send us this out, because this is impossible to read?
It should be in the hub, but if not, we'll put it out anyway. And I'd like to hear from everyone what your final thoughts on the whole thing are. Mr. Booth? Yeah. Okay.
I think you've done a great job of bringing some really great options for consideration, and I'm looking forward to next week with some really good information just to enable us to make the right decision for our community. So well done.
Very little of it was me. I'd like to note for the... I've just been put up in front of it.
I mean, I'm happy. I'd just like that variation for the new theatre in there, like as I mentioned before.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you all that have contributed. I think it's been a really good workshop. I think we've made it quite clear what we need in next week's papers, so I look forward to reading them.
Yeah, I echo that. I just want to get on with it. Cheers.
Great work, good start, and it's good to see the holistic approach to the whole thing so that we can actually view them as options against one another.
Yes, like always, look forward to the detail. So, yeah, and next week, so awesome. Well done, team.
Yep, thanks for today and looking forward to the next steps.
Yeah, thanks very much to the team. In particular, I know that the hours that have been put in to try to get this to this point by now has been quite extraordinary. Much appreciated, and looking forward to next week.
Oh, it's a good way of doing it. So next week we get exactly what we want. And just adding to that quickly, Nigel, I want to know what the project team looks like for this before I agree to delegate it to you.
No further comments. I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this. We did say after that July decision that we wanted to move this sort of at pace. Obviously, it's 2019. So it's good that we've got some urgency around it, and we just need to keep it moving, because as I keep reminding everyone, we've got some other really important conversations, local water done well, social housing, amongst many other things that we need to crack on with. So, I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. Do you want me to close off now? Yeah, so thank you. Appreciate all those that have been in the audience as well. Thanks for all the hard work from the staff. And if you're watching online, I appreciate you being involved and having an interest in this. And that's us. So we'll see you all this afternoon for a council meeting. Thank you.